this is the structure. And then now you ask about FMT, right? And what do we report on, right? So we report on various things: nation, bahasa, opinion, world news, business, lifestyle, automotive, tech, sports. We cover a wide range of things. There are parties who think we are a political site, but the truth is we are not. The political story do really well because we try to write all sides, and it tends to get shared a lot. But we don't just write politics. Of course, all media write about politics. The Age write about politics. Star write about politics. But I think what people want is they want it to be balanced. And when we, as much as possible, try to be balanced, we can see that people share FMT a lot. These are our numbers: about 5 to 6 million unique visitors. And I don't know if you are aware, if you know similar web, uh, we are actually second largest media company. Yahoo is not technically a news company, but you see Berita Harian is here, right? So Berita Harian has the edge because the Malay population is big. FMT is English first. So in terms of unique visitors, we are second highest, and English obviously number one. Harian Metro is here, the Star is here, Sinar Harian is here, Malaysia Kini is here. Then you see NST, Asrawani Online is here, The Edge is here, Malay Mail. I think this is probably industry insights for you. Um, yeah, World of Bus. Bernama is here number 44, Tusan number 54. Yeah, so this is the industry rankings, and Similar Web is a third party site recognized by the industry when it comes to assessing media numbers. Yeah. So on who the readers are of MMT, ethnicity is like this, right? So 50% are Malay, Chinese 31%, Indian 19%, Indian and others are 19%. But what's interesting here is FMT, apparently our readers, 91% have university degrees. We are quite amazed with this as well when the survey was done. But it shows that we do have an intelligent audience following us. And thing is, they are, you see, when we try to write balance and sometimes critical when we need to, not just to the government, but to any sites at all, we attract critical thinking people. And people who are critical thinkers are usually more educated, right? So yeah, so these are the professional, retired, manager, executive, student, business owners. The income level is largely M40 and top 20. Yeah, and yeah, so this who they are.
Great, thanks, Azim. That was an extensive structure of the FMT, and now we know that managing editor is Karam Simwala's brother.
Yes, right. Yes.
So yeah, I know that you said just now you're not really involved in the editorial side, but what can you share with us some of the key elements that makes newsworthy to FMT editors that makes them want to pick up a story?
News that matter to people are those that affects them directly, that affects key people in the country, right? So I actually managed to compile some of the stories, for you to see. So here is the kind of stories that did really well last month, right? So Najib's conviction was the bomb. Yeah, so actually we broke the story first. Interestingly, Malaysia Kini asked how the hell did we break the story first. I said there were simply two versions, right? There could only be two outcomes, right? He goes to jail or he doesn't go to jail. So we had those two ready. And for each scenario, we got the videos ready, the reactions ready, and 10,000 articles ready for each scenarios. And when we got a news from inside the court, we just push one button and everything just explodes. Right? So that was how we did it. But yeah, so Nurul Izzah ties the knot happens to be quite interesting. I don't know why people are interested in that, but yeah. Then when it comes to bahasa article, Mat Kilau tak tepat kata ahli akademik. I don't know if you watch Mat Kilau. I watched it. Yeah, that's no whole new topic to talk about. Yeah, so when it comes to lifestyle, the top people are interested about housing, right? So housing is an important thing to people. Um, Six reasons why graduates are not seeking work. This was quite amazing because DOS did a survey about 70% of SPM leavers have no intention to pursue their higher education. That was actually quite a major issue in the country. Um, Gray hair now a symbol of self worth. 5 local churches that are architectural masterpieces. Yeah, so yeah, this one, Hands Up If You Are Malay and Shamed by Recent Events by Azhar Ibrahim. This one was quite, yeah, major, because of, I think, a lot of do with the political circumstances of our country concerning Malay political parties. Yeah, Ringgit sinks to its lowest. Uh, yeah, so Ringgit obviously affects everybody, affects us. Afiq misses out on medal but breaks national record. People were following this Afiq story a lot. Yeah, so this is badminton. This is sports. For world, whatever China is doing is very much concerning as well. Yeah. So those are the stories. Basically, stories that affects people directly and personalities which they well not say care about, which they follow, right? Like Najib. Yeah. So those are things.
So mostly you would say close to human interest, it would be a high ranking in the news
Yes.
punya criteria lah.
Yes.
So so just now you were saying how you had to preempt the outcomes of what is the talk of the town to macam publish a news kan. So so we get into a more macam saucy question lah, I would say. So FMT is seen as a media to be critical of the Malaysian government. Like you said just now, it's you try your best to be impartial and balanced. But do you face any challenges in obtaining releases or attending government related events?
Okay, to answer that question straight on, we don't really get that challenges. Okay, not a lot. And I'll tell you why, right? So, in the first place, I can see half of the clients that we have are governments from the government side, half, right? Which means that the government can work with FMT. And interestingly, the explanation is that I think in TNB, you have the notion of wanting to be customer centric, right? I think it's very important for all companies to be customer centric. And in the case of FMT, who are our customers? Is the readers, is actually you, right? So we got to be customer centric. We got to be centered around what our readers want. And uh, putting aside, you work in TNB or GLC. I think we as Malaysians, right, we want to know as much truth as possible. I'm not saying ultimate truth, but as much truth as possible. You want media to be intelligent. You want media to be balanced so that you are able to decide better for yourself and your families, right, and for your career. uh, and that is what we want, people want, and that's what we have to give them, even if it means being critical. But we give credit when it's due. We provide constructive criticism when needed. Only then people will read us. Otherwise, people won't, and that will be bad for business. And as you can see, FMT managed to reach at the top of the ranking, and there's a reason why we got there. We weren't there 10 years ago when we started off, but at the last 5 years, we tried to write all sides. And I give you a bit of a history of the media industry. So, in the 1980s, 1980s, 1990s, media, the traditional media has always been slanted towards the government. Then in 1998, Malaysia Kini came to tilt the balance, right? But they had to take the other end of the extreme. But people don't, people are generally, they still want a very centrist kind of media. So we came in, wanting to offer that value proposition, and thankfully it worked. And that's how we experienced that phenomenal growth in the last 5 years, all the way to the top, right? So we yes, I can accept, I can say that we are critical of the government, but we also support a lot of their policies when we feel that they are right, or at least when our readers feel that they are right. We criticize the opposition. We also promote ideas from the opposition side. So only by doing so can we get that kind of leadership and that brand trust in the news brand that we have, right? Yeah. So ultimately, that's why the government generally is able to work with FMT to a large extent. We do sometimes they do call us and try to, I won't say intervene or whatever, but they do try to challenge what we wrote, but we will address it. And as long as we don't misstate or misrepresent certain things, in the end, we don't put the stories down. But if there are mistakes, we will say sorry, and we have done so a couple of times, and we will put the article down or correct it. Yeah, so that's how we have to run things now for media.
So there's a misconception lah about FMT being, very uh, super one-sided or something, but it's actually a good relationship that you have with the government lah. So that's debunking a myth of some. So could you share with us a situation where you were at a crossroads in making the decision whether or not to publish a news, and what was the reason of that final decision? Can you take us through that thought process?
Yes. So the first is when it comes to race, religion, right? It's always a sensitive thing to talk about, and we try to be measured about it as to not cause unnecessary tensions, right? That's the first. The second, if it involves national security and economic security, right? So I'll give you an example, right? This is what's happening now. In July 21st, media barred from reporting on Sulu claim. Media but we are, and what happened here was that just to share with those who may not follow this development, basically the Sultanate of Sulu make claims on Sabah, and we, when you look at our historical route, we know we do had to pay, we did have to pay them some dues up to the point when they invaded Sabah in Lahad Datu, and that's when the Malaysian government stopped paying those dues. But they went on to continue pushing for that claim, and because they didn't get Sabah, then they are after Petronas, right? They're now going after Petronas, and they are trying to, mutilate us limb by limb, actually, of the Petronas assets. So it was quite, I think, it was quite dangerous a time that, and the MPs actually from both sides of the political divide had a briefing, but because it was so sensitive, uh, the opposition themselves did not, I would say, politicize it, right? Well, actually, the reason is because they all were sort of involved, right? Because PH was in government, PN was in government, now BN, Semayan Sabri. So nobody said a thing. But the reality is that when you look at our exports, right, petroleum comes second highest. So Petronas is a very important revenue generator for the country, and here we see that the Sulu Sultanate is aftering our assets, and latest is this 15 billion USD worth of assets, and they are going after the assets all around the world. And given that they have won in won in the French court, they are likely to win more, right? They could lose in some countries, but they would eventually win more. But in one country, they can win 15 billion. Just imagine how many billions we will lose from Petronas, and therefore our potential revenue in the future. So it does pose a national security threat, and we know a lot about it, but we choose to be silent for now, as to give space for the government to work on this issue, right? But if the push comes to shove, I think the people would need to know to some extent what's going on here, so that we will be able to somehow address it together. Because as you can see there, if our petroleum revenue is affected, it will cause economic problems for us. In the long run. So at the crossroad, yeah, we are now at the crossroad. So your question is very interesting. We are at the crossroad, and now we are just waiting and see for the time being.
So I think that links well to our next question. So wanting to report the truth and like letting the people know what they need to know, kan? So Malaysia has a low placing in press freedom according to Reporters Without Borders. Does this impact the type of news being released by FMT, or do you ultimately like this is what the people need to know? You
Okay, regardless of that press freedom index, I can say to you now that we no longer face that problem. We did before, but we no longer do, especially on the online side, right? Generally, the online platforms are pretty much free to a large extent. Um, the print had some issues in the 1MDB days where the Edge was banned. Sarawak Report was also banned. And only up till that time that we had those censorships going on. But after the GE14, we saw that things change because the government became a bit fragmented, right? So you have PH government, which was PH government and PN, and now Ismail Sabri's government. Because of that fragmentation, they no longer have that kind of cloud to control everything. That includes media, right? So, uh, and that has allowed freedom for us to write about anything. But even prior to GE14, FMT did not face the issues at all. As long as we don't slander or fabricate stories, it should be fine. Uh, and because it's online, they can't really block us unless they block our domain, right? But for print, it's still, I think, perhaps still quite controlled because uh, print news organization, they need license, and license are issued by the government, and TV as well, right? So to some extent, they got to toe the line and not go overboard. So that is what we are facing. But FMT so far, thankfully, nothing have stopped us from writing anything that we wanted. Yeah.
That's great. So far we've talked about FMT, how the media, how you work and how the company work. So let's get into the communications part. So, what are the best ways, in your opinion, for communication professionals to build their relationship with journalists? How do they keep the good relationship?
All right. The first is actually being honest. Okay. Both sides need to be honest with each other. Okay. Media has to be honest in wanting to report the truth. Media has to be honest in not misrepresenting what the stakeholders say, uh, and it has to work both ways, right? And media practitioners, they need to be, I would say, totally transparent, but we do know sometimes things are too sensitive to be mentioned, but you can always go off the record as opposed to avoiding questions, right? So journalists, they always want to press for question. I think um, the best way is to answer them as much as possible. If you can't say certain things, you can go off the record to give better context and understanding. And I think that's the most the best way to improve the relationship, and it's through honest conversations with each other, and both sides have to play a part in that. That's the first. The second is understand. I think people who are not in the media industry uh, would would probably need to also understand how media work as well, in the sense that media understand the audience, and they audience don't like propaganda, right? So we try our best to provide as much truth as possible to the people, without sugarcoating things, and you leave it to the media to communicate it in the best way possible, in the most honest way possible to the audience, and both media and media practitioners have to work together to achieve that, right? Because everybody will need to, not just the media practitioners, the media themselves, put ourselves in the shoes of audience, the rakyat. What kind of content you want to see? You want trustworthy content, and that's what we have to give them. And by doing these two things, we can definitely build a very strong working relationship between media practitioners and media.
Right. So it's a two-way street. It's a two-way understanding lah.
Yeah.
So our next question is, as companies are ramping up their ESG initiatives, so we've seen so many people jumping on that bandwagon. How can communication professionals angle these stories so it doesn't seem like they're just mere greenwashing?
All right. So we got to look at the governance side of ESG first, right? So ESG, the G stands for governance, right? E is environment, S is social, G is governance. Now, when we try our best to have integrity in our system, in our culture, we will try to be as honest as possible in any kind of in everything that we do, including communication, right? So I feel that it is not about trying to go green or trying to angle a story. I think if we genuinely care for the environment, and there's honesty and integrity in the way we handle that, then we would really try to practice, you know, we'll try to be more environmentally cautious and friendly as a company and as individuals, and that will then naturally reflect in what we put out, right, how we communicate things, and if we can work on that first, right? And I think work on that first. And I think for some of you who may have been involved in cultural transformation, I know Shukrin has. So cultural transformation where we can achieve that, then it will translate into all aspect of the business, social, environment, governance, and I think that is what we should aim for. Not by just saying, you know, we want to do ESG for the sake of going green, right? Because people can see through that. When I was in MD's office, I was put charge on of the sustainability report, right? I know, you know, what I tell the team back then was that, you know, we gotta really look at how we do things here first, you know, be genuine about it, and then, you know, then report it, but not trying to, you know, really try to put all the numbers and the visuals. You know, this all doesn't mean anything, right? If we ourselves have no true appreciation for those things. So it always starts with ourselves, right? And the kind of culture that we have. So I would say that, you know, to improve on that front, all of us, I remind myself as well as a company, that we have to look at the G, you know, before the E, right? The governance before the E. Once we get that sorted out, we have integrity, you know, in the way we run our business. Not just environment. We must have meritocracy in our system. You know, as a company, we have to be paying people fairly, regardless of gender, race, or creed. You know, and if we have this kind of mindset, um, then everything else will follow, and the E and the S will follow.
So it shouldn't just be a mere trend, which leads to our last question in our moderated session. Media trends are constantly evolving nowadays, especially now with the internet, TikTok, very fast moving social medias. Will there be any new section that may feature in FMT in the near future? Maybe like a TikTok trend punya section or something.
Very interesting that you mentioned. Yes, the answer is a big yes. TikTok, definitely, right? So, but I think the broader answer to that is, now uh, the thing is, even FMT is trying to improve the way we do journalism. We are not fully satisfied of where we are at, right? There's a long way. There's still a lot more areas of improvement. I'm pretty sure you know, to improve the quality of our journalism, and that is the first thing that we gotta, you know, improve on. But the other thing that we notice is visual content, and visual content has become so big that it contributes almost 45% to FMT. Sorry, to FMT's traffic. And the FMT traffic is, you know, when it's driven by visual. What I mean by visual is actually videos. FMT is actually quite big on something called explainers. If some of you have seen Vox, right? Vox Media, or you know, or probably CNBC explains, where they actually go deep into a particular story and explain it in a visual kind of way, putting in video infographics, and trying to be to try to give some depth into the whole story. And we do that very frequently here, almost every week we do that, and in order to give people an overarching or overall view of critical issues of the day, right? And I would just like to show you an example of it. Let me just show you what we've been working on, and I think this affects everybody here, including me, which is price hike. You know, recently we have issues with, you know, price going up, so we actually did a video on it, right? So this is the video, and this is what we call explainers.
Rising food prices from vegetables to roti canai have made headlines recently, prompting the government to institute measures such as export bans and prolonging the imposition of ceiling prices. In recent weeks, the price of vegetables and fish have increased by 4.5% and 3.8% respectively, while restaurant owners have warned that roti canai prices could rise to 2 ringgit 20 cent owing to higher prices of wheat, dal, and cooking oil. The retail price of chicken has been capped at 8 ringgit 90 cent per kilogram, which farmers say is too low. The government has announced a new ceiling price of 9 ringgit 40 cent per kilogram effective July 1st. But why are prices rising, and will government measures actually work? FMT takes a closer look at this issue and the way forward. Carmelo Ferlito from the Center for Market Education attributed the rising prices to both domestic and international supply chain issues, resulting from such factors as the Russia-Ukraine conflict and a spike in raw material costs.
One of the biggest ways we're all feeling the pinch is, of course, at the pump. Gas prices reaching a record high.
Ukraine on global food prices. Russia is the world's largest exporter of wheat.
Domestically, he said, COVID-19 lockdowns, labor shortages, and the hike in the minimum wage to 1,500 ringgit were contributing factors. Ferlito said the lockdowns led to a reduction in both supply and demand, and while demand recovered quickly after international borders were reopened and restrictions lifted, this was not the case with supply.
And on the supply side, this means shutting down plants, firing workers, stopping to stockpile raw materials.
As for chicken prices, he said the cost of chicken feed components, such as corn, had also risen, drastically pushing up running costs for poultry farmers. In April, the prices of chicken feed components, such as grain, corn, and soybean meals, increased by 13% and 11% respectively. Ferlito said for chicken prices to come down, the ceiling price must be removed so that it could be determined by the market.
Prices for this commodity, chicken specifically, in order to give the signal to producers that profit opportunities are there to be exploited, and therefore to bring back the quantity supplied in equilibrium with the quantity demanded, which is necessary for the supply to step up and to meet the increased demand, and so naturally the prices can cool off again.
As for other food items, Ferlito said it was an issue of supply meeting demand, and once this happened, prices would start to normalize. So if price controls are not effective, what else can the government do? Aside from letting market forces determine prices, Ferlito said the government could provide food vouchers to the hardcore poor. But he said the subsidy should not last more than 3 months, by which time the market would have corrected any price volatility.
This, I think, can work better than direct cash aids, because a market can emerge for these vouchers, so that people that are less in the need of them can trade with people that are more in the need. So people can adjust each other to the mutual needs.
Yeah, so this is what we call as explainers. We take on an issue, we give a various perspective, we use visuals to explain the concepts, the economic concept of supply and demand, so that people can understand it, right? If you notice this news, we weren't critical of the government. I think we acknowledge that there are a lot of things that are outside their control, including the war in Ukraine, the COVID-19 issue which affected our supply chain, and that's how we explain to the people. And we even provided some solutions on how to address this. And I think KPD and HGP was very happy with this, that they share it along. So this is something which we do almost every week. And this is a new feature which we have added in, actually not recently, but since last year. And it has been very popular. The viewership on this are pretty high, and people want more of this. It helps with understanding of issues. In fact, it shapes opinion. I can even go on to say that it shapes opinion in a large way. And when you think about it, this kind of explainers also aids the MPs, the legislators in the issues that they debate in Parliament, right? So recently we put out an issue about the generational end game, the tobacco, right? The pros and cons of doing it sooner rather than later, right? Are we ready? And then we spoke about DNB as well, whether is it the best model to go with, right? So we look at issues about the Cold War, the technology Cold War between US and China, right? And how that is affecting Malaysia, right? Because now they have all of our data, and more than our own government, right? So they can actually use the data to their advantage and therefore pose a national security threat. So these are the kind of issues we do explainers for, and people want more of this. So that is I think the way forward, and we're probably the only media that's doing this seriously and frequently. Yeah, so this is a new feature we have. I invite you to follow FMT's YouTube to get more of this.
Thank you, Azim. We look forward to more explainers from FMT. I think what I can say is sekarang ni pun with the younger generations, the attention span gets shorter and shorter. So with an explainer video like this, it gets the information, the bite-sized information out fast. So that is the end of our moderated question and answer session. Now we open the floor to anyone who wants to ask any questions, and Azim will answer. So who would like to go first?
Hi, Azim. This is
Hi.
Shah. Just wondering, in your many years of journalistic experience and running FMT, what was the most difficult or most challenging experience? Was there a call from the Prime Minister's office telling you to take out a particular news, or was FMT being sued? What was the most challenging? Could you share?
Well, actually, the most challenging is actually talent, right? I know you were looking for getting calls from these guys, and I can say we do get it. Since it's a closed door session, I can say we do get it, but that's not really a problem for us because in the first place we are privately owned, so we have that kind of independence to say no, right? And we have many times said no to them, and there's nothing they can do about it. But the point we want to make is that we always invite them to uh, to comment about it, right? The problem is when they don't want to comment. If they don't want to comment, what can we do? We even went to great lengths of even advising them. Okay, maybe you should say it in this way, so it makes sense. But sometimes they actually do listen, and in fact, many times they do listen to FMT when we suggest them to do that. But sometimes they don't. So what can we do, right? But I can say that is not the most challenging thing in FMT. The challenge is talent, and I think even TNB would have that kind of issue as well, because talent, editorial and journalistic talent is not easy to come by, quality ones, especially in English, right? So there is this generational issue we face, where the generation that was educated by the English, right? The Mat Saleh back then, they tend to have better command of the English language and better writing skills as well. And after that, the younger generation, we do face challenges recruiting younger generation that would be able to come up with a clean copy, right? And believe it or not, while I may be young here, all the sub editors, right? Sub editors are those who check the stories, are all above 50. We don't have a sub editor below 50 here, and that is quite worrying, right? What happens when they are gone? What happens when they leave the industry? Of course, we got to do a lot of training, because you see, when the internet came, there are more, I would say, tolerance given to social English, right? Where people just write it in the way they speak. And this is not the kind of writing style that FMT wants. We strive to be, like Reuters. We try to get to that kind of level. But when students in journalism are not trained to that level, and they, it becomes very hard for us to get them to that level where you just provide a clean copy, grammatically correct, factually correct, have that kind of keen eye for detail. That's something we have yet to see. So I'm not saying just FMT, but the entire media industry has this big talent risk, right? And you can, if you even you look at NST or the Star, the editors are generally much older. Yeah. So I think next 5 years we will face a lot of problems in terms of editorial quality. But here in FMT, we are trying to nip it in the bud. We are doing intense training to ensure that we reach the quality that's needed and that is acceptable by the people. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Azim.
Hi, Azim, Harina. Hello.
Hi, Arina.
Hi. I got two questions. One is, how long do you take to do your explainer video? What's the standard turnaround time? That's one. Second thing, what is the most favorite and least favorite in your line of work?
Okay.
That's
Okay. The first question, it takes between 3 to 7 days, most of the time, 3 to 7 days. So the one you saw took us, I think was 1 week to do. Yeah. There are faster ones, like with less visuals, you can actually do it within 3 days. 2 days within 3 days is possible. It always takes time for us to do this, the animation, right? The animation is always the tricky part. It's not animating that's tricky. It's in explaining it in the way that people will understand. That's not easy, because the person who visual those animation has to understand the concept, right? So I remember when I was doing that video. Of course, I learned economics since I was 16 years old, all the way to university. So I had to explain to her the concept of supply and demand, right? I know supply and demand has a sort of chart, supply chart, demand chart, right? I got to explain that to her, and then suggest the best way of visualizing it. So in the end, we didn't use a graph, but you saw that we used that the shop, and then the people, and then the chicken, right? So that was actually a representation of the supply and demand graph. Yes. So and that took time to do because I got to give her a crash course in economics. Yeah. So that was it. That was a fun time. What I like about the jobs is actually seeing real impact. Okay, and I give you an example, right? Being in media and the kind of influence which FMT has, being at the top with the mass media attention, mass market attention, we get to see policy change because of the stories we write. Right? We get to see, we get to see the legislators react to our news and say certain things which better improves which improves well, say the way they communicate with the people and providing more solutions. An example of that is probably uh, okay, maybe DNB is a bit too sensitive. Okay, maybe Subang Airport, I guess. Okay, Subang Airport, for example, right? So Subang Airport is okay. Now I think everybody here would probably rather go to Subang if you want to go to Thailand. So if you want to fly somewhere in the region, right? Thailand or Singapore, you would probably want to go to Subang Airport instead of KIA. If you live in Klang Valley, KIA will be quite far to go. So what happened was that WCT wanted to take over Subang Airport and privatize it, and then reroute those traffic there, but at the expense of KLIA. Now, a lot of money has been put into KLIA. And if that ever happens, then KIA will actually suffer, right? And it may not be in the interest of the people as a whole, because you see, MHB has a role to play when it comes to ensuring that even the most secluded areas have airports. For example, it's deep in Sarawak, so they need the kind of surplus from the like Subang Airport, which was actually their golden goose, to fund this kind of social, not business feasible airports, right? So they have a social aim as well, strategic aim, being MHB. So then we put out a lot of stories about that, put out a lot of reasoning that why this deal may not be, the best deal for the people. After I think about 12 stories, we got Sadiq to come in and say something. We got Tok Mak Hassan to say something. In the end, the deal got, well, I think it's put on hold to a large extent, right? Pending further review. So um, uh, so this is one example where we kind of pose some questions that actually affect what happens on the ground. In the end, the deal did not go through, and they are forced to rethink whether this would benefit the nation as a whole, right? Instead of a particular company. Yeah, so that's just one, and FMT does this every single day. Every single day, there will be there will be stuff that we wrote that has impact. Like today, on labor shortage, as you probably know, we are actually in a labor shortage crisis where a lot of our factories do not have enough workers to sustain their business, right? So we keep on putting out stories about getting those laborers come in, and finally we have started to hear news that get news that they are getting approvals. 10,000 foreign workers were approved to come in. And things are finally moving. Yeah, so this is the best part of doing my job. Now the not so interesting part, I would say, yeah, we do get those kind of calls, right? And when people, okay, the worst part is when people don't understand what journalism should be, right? Journalism, media has to be balanced, and when some parties in the government don't understand that, it's a bit frustrating when they think we are being critical of them, we are not allied to them, because I think they're so used to the traditional media being very pro one side, that when we try to practice global standards of journalism, they can't accept it. This morning I was reading BBC, they were grilling the prime minister, right? In fact, the headline says, I screenshot it for our benefit today, right? So it says that, wait, where is it? Are you ashamed? Prime Minister Liz Truss has been grilled by BBC local radio station. This is what BBC, what BBC wrote, right? So this is BBC, right? And BBC is the main media in the UK, and they can come up with headlines saying that they grill the Prime Minister. Have you seen FMT come up with this headline where we grill the Prime Minister? No, we don't even go that far, right? So, when people cannot appreciate that, it becomes a bit frustrating. But good thing when I have this kind of conversation with them, they started to understand and they started to accept. But thankfully, a lot of them have started to understand and appreciate what we do here. Yeah.
Thank you, Azim. You can't see my face. I got two names there.
Oh.
One, I'm using my phone to speak because my laptop.
Oh
The
yeah, now I can
speaker,
see
yeah.
you. You can
Now you
see
can
you.
see me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Thanks.
thanks for the questions.
Hi,
Hi,
Azim.
Azim. Ah,
Okay, Kiki, you go first. You go first.
okay. Hi, Azim. Kiki's here. Actually, I have three questions.
Three.
Yeah, three questions.
Okay.
I love that you
But-
keep repeating that visual content is very important.
Yeah.
My question is a little bit technical lah, because I saw during your presentation on the structure, there is divisions between photographers and videographers. People always assuming that photographers can always do video, videographers can always do photo. So actually the question first is, what is the importance of separating these two divisions between photographers and videographers in your opinion? And secondly, it's about the supply chain. How does it work in FMT? Are these videographers need to come out with their own products, or are they just providing assistance and being support to the news editors? And my third question is, based on the statistic that you have shown, all the top articles are all in English. So does that mean that people are not tending to read in Malays and we should focus on English articles only for now? That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question. The first, whether you should separate video versus photographer. Actually, we actually look at their talent first, right? So what are they capable of? And then we design the system around them, and see how if it works with how we do things. And for I think you got to really see what they love doing and what they are really capable, and you need to know this, right? So when you ask an interview a photographer or a video editor, right, so you got to know what they live for versus what they do out of necessity. So what they live for means, what they are passionate about. They like the photography or they like editing. That's the first. Then, or are they just doing it because it's a job? So if we know that they are passionate more on photography, then we would definitely get them to focus more on that. And if they like editing, then we get them to focus on that. And that has worked pretty well in FMT because we want them to be putting their all in the work that they do, and that would translate in the quality of content that we put out, right? But I think because I do have somebody who's able to take photographs. She's able to edit and do the visuals. She is also a voice-over artist. She can script. She can do everything, right? But in the end, we decided, okay, you know what? You don't have to do photography because you are better at writing stories and coming up with the visuals, and she also likes doing it. So that's how we define the role as such. The second thing, supply chain, right? Whether the photographer comes up with their own stuff or they became a support system. Both, actually in FMT, both. In FMT, there's a section called gallery, and under gallery, we allow for the photographers to actually propose ideas to the desk, and if the desk love it, and they are encouraged to go and get those photos, right? So there's one photographer who want to take photos of a coffee factory, how they roast coffee, and we allowed him to do so, and we park it nicely under lifestyle, and the photographs did really well, right? Because it's photograph of fire and smoke, and you can smell the coffee even by looking at the photos, right? So yeah, so that's how we do it for them. And okay, the final question, why you see top news are English? Actually, the way I presented the slide is actually based on the sections, right? So the section which I showed you was English, but there was BM as well. Let me just see if I have it here. It's not that English was ada ni top bahasa kan. I came to this Mat Kilau punya ni kan. I'll just share with you again so that you can see. There was this section, and it's just in the different slide. Because I did it according to section, right? So I just share it with you so you can see. Ni, this is the bahasa lah. Mat Kilau, tak tepat kata ahli akademik. Rayang kes RC Najib. Najib tiba di penjara Kajang. Semua banyak Najib kat sini. Right? So our BM is actually really strong. In fact, in many articles, when we put out a BM version of the article, it has 4 times more readership. A lot of the times. Yeah. So those are the answers to the questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Azim. This is Grace.
Yes, Grace.
Okay. Hi. I would like to know, as a media practitioner, as a elite group, and as a public, what is your impression on TNB? And what do you expect from TNB?
You mean the perception towards TNB?
Yes. Are we fast? Are we doing enough? Or what is our product which you can remember? Are we together with the people, with the community?
Yeah. Well, for starters, I know you well enough to know your motto, writers and better, right? The brighter, the better, I think. That's the motto, right? Yeah, so I think at least, well, in the urban areas, of course, TNB has been very reliable, I guess, except for that day when there was a blackout. But I can say for FMT, it benefited a lot because we got a lot of traffic then. And we actually broke the news, and I was here, and suddenly I saw the train stop. Then everything blacked out, and my guys just took a picture, and then it was on the news within 5 minutes, right? Something happened. Yeah, but I think generally, what I think people are probably they want to look forward to is how you shift towards sustainable energy, right? And we can see TNB has started that in a big way. So I have a friend in TNB now who's doing that. His name is Darimi. I think he is doing investments in new sustainable technologies, and I think the younger generation are more aware and care about this a lot more, and I think TNB is moving in the right direction. It's just a question of how fast we get there, right? in the end, I think there will come a time where the people would expect that much of the electricity supply comes from renewable energy sources. So if TNB can demonstrate that, then they will be doing something that is close to the hearts of the people, right? Yeah. So the perception. I mean, I can't say it for myself, but I think uh, TNB remains to be a robust company, has been reliable all these years. Only except for this a few period where I think they probably need a bit more explanation on what happened that breakout, right? And perhaps people were asking for some accountability there, right? And I think what would have probably been good is if we know more on what happened on that day. We know that there were issues on the plant, right? But how do we avoid it from happening again, right? Because it clearly affects everybody, and everybody is relying on TNB and TNB alone for their electricity. Yeah, that's the first lah. I think the second is the but this is not TNB lah. I think it's more on government, right? In terms of our energy policy, right? So our policy having TNB as the sole provider. Is it the way forward, or do we open it for competition? Like, because DNB was quite controversial, right? Because DNB, they wanted DNB to be to be they didn't want DNB to control the 5G infra, right? So we know that the sentiment on the ground is people tend to be anti-monopolistic, right? So how would DNB, I think, be able to assure the people that despite it controlling the entire, I would say, electricity ecosystem in the country, they are still able to be efficient, that people still get value for money when it comes to paying for the electricity tariff, to reveal as much as possible what TNB is doing about the subsidies that they have given, to the people. Because I do know TNB does a lot of that, right? So it's all about having those things communicated to the public, because nothing wrong of being the sole provider, but as long as people are getting value for money, I think things will be okay, right? And this is where I think media will come in to understand TNB a lot better, to be able to communicate these things. Yeah.
Thank you, Azim.
Was there another question? Otherwise, can I ask something, Azim?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think
Sure.
a number of people wanted to say something today.
Yeah.
Actually, what you mentioned just now also brings me to a few things, right? I think it's great there's this interest also, and let's get the teams closer together, Azim, right, to find out a little bit more about some of these issues that you just raised. So you can also understand TNB better, right? We actually want to have a closeout brief on the power disruption the other day, because there was some interest and all that. So that one will be happening, and we're happy to get your team on board, right, to have a view on the perspective that we can provide, right, from this side. And some of the other things that you brought up, right, in terms of the monopoly and whether or not we're getting a good tariff, which we are in the whole region, right, and all that. Some of these things, I think, more than happy for us to sort of show the team at FMT, give you a bit of background information, you know, and so anytime, let's get that going as well. I wanted to ask. I also very good to hear a lot of things that has come from your sharing just now. When we talk about when you spoke about what people would be interested in, obviously as a news portal and going out to the public, you want to carry things that people are interested in, people interest stories, as you mentioned earlier, right? And as far as TNB is concerned here, it will be things like this, kan? Tariff, how it affects them, what they're paying. You mentioned there is a concern, given the demography of your readership. You talk about an educated, aware public that is therefore then quite supportive of making sure that we are on the way to a renewable and more sustainable energy future. and you mentioned that then, so they're looking, right? They're looking to see how fast we can move to bring renewable energy into this. That as we move in the energy transition, I mentioned this when I spoke at the start of our session, that it does require a lot of participation from the public as well, right? Because consumers, through their choices of energy usage and all that, will drive the demand side of the energy transition. Does a portal like yours, FMT, do you also view um, as a responsibility on your part to bring this awareness and education to the people? Is there an interest to do this? Is there also a sense that we need to be doing this as a whole of nation approach, right? It's a whole of society, whole of government approach to be sure that we can drive a successful and also an inclusive energy transition. And in that sense, coming from TNB's perspective, then there is a role to play, right? Especially with media partners and all that. And I'm interested to gauge how you feel about that. That that is something that the media should also be looking at to do.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the questions and the sharing. Definitely, media, especially FMT, we take environment seriously. We have come out with, I did count almost every day. We will have one or two stories about the environment, about companies doing, putting more effort in that side of things. Um, and yeah, we got to have everybody start to think about it seriously. And being mass media, we do have the ability to spread that awareness, and we are using that influence for that purpose. We have worked with various companies. I think Jentayu Sustainable's Berhad is now working on small hydro, right? So we covered them because they wanted to do small hydro, which is less disruptive towards the environment compared to big mega dams, right? So yeah, so we also work with Samdabi on sustainability stories as well, and I think we also highlight the plight of climate change, how it affects farmers, especially, right? Even to some extent, in the flood season, right? During the flood season, we took the opportunity to touch on climate change as well. To put the question whether this has to do with the way we have been treating the environment. Maybe it's not told directly, but maybe it is, right? We have been inviting experts. YB Wong Tek from DAP, he's the MP of Bentong. He was just sitting next to me, I think last week Friday in a dinner. He is very big on environment, right? And he has, when I was speaking to him, he has no interest in talking so much about the political side of things. He was just talking to me about Lindas. He was talking to me about how Bentong is being polluted by certain parties. How he's very worried about it. He was talking about the bauxite in Pahang. So I spoke to him. You know what, YB, why don't you come board and become a source for FMT to speak about the environment? So we are actively talking about the environment, especially especially me, right? I hope if I live long enough, it's the future. I'm concerned about my future, right? My kids' future. Everybody here is, I think a lot of them, a lot of you here are quite young as well. We are concerned about our future, so we are genuinely worried about it, and that is being reflected in the kind of stories that we put out. Yeah, so I really welcome if TNB wants to work together with us on this, because especially TNB, being TNB, you are a key stakeholder in this as well, right? So really, I think if we work together with our mass reach and you on the implementation side, we can achieve great things together.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Azim. Anything else? Linda, did you want to say something tadi?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because I listened just now. Azim was saying the most challenging part in handling FMB is talent. You have issue on talents, right? So I was asking how do you deal with that? And how do you actually maintain the people that you have around you? Could you hear me?
How do you, sorry, what people around us?
How do you actually maintain and motivate the people
Oh,
that you have to sustain? And the last question would be, I also heard you say you're also giving an intense training for them. So I would like to know what kind of training that you actually fill in to your people there. Yeah.
okay. So I think your question revolves around how we resolve the talent crisis, right? ah, okay. So I cannot bring my laptop there, but in FMT we have this epicenter, right? Everybody in the desk actually sits on this very big ass desk, which is probably, it looks like it's no, it's probably 800 square feet. No, maybe 700 square feet table, right? It's like the size of a small apartment, so big. Everybody sits around the table, and uh, the young journalists, editors sits next to the older ones. They literally sit to the older ones. The more experienced journalists who are 50 overs, they don't really have a room here. They sit next to, the young ones, and they literally coach the young ones, sitting next to them every single day. There's no other way other than doing that. You got to impart the knowledge or the experience to the young one is as ASAP before it's too late. There's no shortcut, there's no magic. It's going down back to basics, sitting and giving personal coaching every minute and every day, right? And they will get shouted at sometimes, but they learn. Those who can't take it will leave, but we always tell that it is for your own good, nothing personal, but I guess in your company, I'm pretty sure that we, in order to push our boundaries, sometimes you got to use a stick, right? You use both stick and carrot. So only then it will work. And how do we maintain them, right? I think the sense of purpose is very important. And earlier, the question on what makes me happy working here is the impact. And when they see those impact that they make, and for journalists, for true blue journalists, nothing beats the satisfaction of seeing their story making an impact on the ground. You know, they will be in tears when they see that, okay, the story that they put out actually raised some funds for a person who is homeless, right? So and we do it quite frequently, and every time we put out a story, we'll get a few 100,000, right? More than what the person wants. And that is what matters to them. And there was one story which I think, remember during COVID time, KJ, I think they were deciding on whether or not to give the vaccines for pregnant mothers, right? And one person who weren't getting the vaccine because she was pregnant actually voiced out, when are we getting our vaccine? Everybody else getting vaccine, but not her because she's pregnant. Because people just not sure whether she should take it, right? Because sometimes, some doctor says yes, some doctor says no. So she said, but we are continuously at risk. So she came to FMT, asked us to highlight that. So we carried it in the morning, I think about 10. By 11, Hannah Yo came in, and then a few other MPs came in. By 5 p.m., during the daily KJ briefs, she announced, okay, I think it was Pfizer for pregnant mothers. AstraZeneca also was possible. So within a period of few hours, we put out the news, we see the effect immediately, and they were just cheering that, that they managed to do that. So these kind of things, it work better than money. And that sense of purpose is what I think, especially I think the younger generation, they seem to like this kind of thing, right? Because they, they watch YouTube, and where people talk about, purpose, the power of why and all that. It's quite big for them. Yeah, so that's how we try to maintain, the talents there. Of course, I'm not saying that we don't pay them well. The FMT salary, we did a survey in the media industry is probably about 20% higher than others. So, but they gotta live up to the kind of intensity and expectations here as well. So I'm not trying to give you a rosy picture that it's just about the cost, right? At the end of the day, it does come down to dollars and cents, and to a large extent, we try to be competitive on that front. Mm.
Right. Thank you, Azim, for the answers. I think prior to that, I got my colleague would like to ask question. Fiza.
Sure, sure.
Hi, Azim, Fiza from Transformation. Okay, extending to Datin Linda's questions, we do find your very interesting. We find it very interesting for you to touch on internal training for your staff because at our level, we also want to make our AV team a more to make them a more quality content producers. We don't want them just to cover stuff, go to the event and cover stuff. We want them to be able to have some background check on what they are actually producing. So because you say you're doing a training that very specific on the job training for your staff, is there any possibility that we can collab on that?
Wow.
We do find that relevant, relevant with our internal staff, our internal
Yeah,
AV
yeah. I
team.
mean, a workshop. If you want us to come over to share, we'll be more than happy to. We'll send somebody quite senior, experienced to be able to share these things with you. The best practices. I mean, today is what we discussed about is quite general. But if you want to go into technical details of content creation, definitely, we'll be more than happy to come by and share what we know about what we know about media, and of course learn something from you too. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Azim.
Oh, thank you, Azim.
Sempat lagi.
Cepat eh.
So I think we have one time for one last question. Is there anyone yang nak tanya one last question?
Hi, Jazzy.
Hi.
Adi here. You did mention just now about the TikTok and visual presentations. I just want to ask, where do you see FMT in 5 years? And where is the direction?
Nice question to conclude the whole thing, right? So where I see FMT, a very diverse media company, okay, and FMT as everybody knows it, currently we do news. But when you look at a lot of news agencies, media agencies, not just talking about news, they can actually do a lot of other things. Okay, and the news media, because of that brand, right? We can actually invest in other businesses and maybe expand on those front as well. Like for example, you look at Disney. So Disney is a media company, but it is also in consumer products. They are also in hospitality. They are in property. They are also in news media, right? They own news media. They are in, of course, entertainment, movies. And I think that is what a media company can be. And in order to reach that, FMT has something called the accelerator program, right? So FMT Accelerator is venture capital that invests in startups, in companies, any kind of companies. And what we provide is actually funding, and we provide media coverage for the company to improve their branding and their revenue. And the fund size is quite big. It's secretly bigger than Cradle or Meranti actually, but we never reveal those things. If you have a company you want us to invest in, come over, all right? I can share with you. So and we provide expertise to accelerate the growth of this company. Because with our kind of reach, we can actually grow their brand. We can get them, we can market their products, and yeah. But that is just the start. For your information, FMT has a partnership with Media Prima. We actually do business together. And we are not part of Media Prima Group, not on in the corporate structure side of things, but we collaborate with them on business, and going to the market, right? And because of that infrastructure that is at our disposal, you're talking about tapping into a media juggernaut, FMT and Media Prima, reaching to almost all Malaysians in the country through various media outlets, from traditional media, print, digital, TV, radio, and billboards, right? So the kind of offerings for startups is immense under the accelerator program. We've started with one company so far, and about 50 applicants came by, but not not easy to get the good ones. So sorry, not 50, but 30. Sorry, 30. Yeah, and this is how FMT is looking at diversifying its businesses, right? And we are also looking at TV, right? Maybe sometime next year. Where we appear, I think you probably know where, right? So we are looking at that kind of medium as well. We are expanding quite rapidly, and like I said, the challenge now is talent, right? So how do we get the talent to be ready for all of these plans? So 5 years from now, I can predict that if everything goes well, God willing, it will be a hell lot bigger a company than it is today. Brand wise, we're already sort of there, right? Brand wise, FMT is there at the top. But as a business, right, in terms of the asset that it owns, in terms of the different businesses that it has stakes in, it will be quite diversified. So that is where we are heading. Very exciting times, I can tell you that. Yeah.
Thank you, Jazim.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Azim, for sharing, and looking forward to FMT punya progress and what we're definitely expecting more lah in the future. So before we end, can I get everyone to switch on their cameras for a quick photo session? Boleh ke? I'm seeing some cameras still not switched on. Okay, if we're ready. Okay, I'm gonna count to 3. Give me your biggest smile. 1, 2, 3. And one more. 1, 2, 3. All right, great. Lovely. Thank you so much, Azim.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you, Shukrin and everyone. It was nice seeing you and read FMT.
Yeah.
Me
Thank you. It
too.
was great.
Me
Thank
too.
you so
It
much.
floods my phone every day.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining, everyone, and thank you, Azim, for coming on this morning. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good
Thank
weekend,
you.
everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Have a
And
good
hopefully
weekend,
we'll
everyone. Thanks,
connect after
Azim.
this
Take
Bye.
care.
meeting. Thanks very much.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
so
Bye,
much.
everyone.